We are discussing leadership and its influence with Dr. Reuel Khoza, who is author of the books Attuned Leadership, Let Africa Lead, The African in My Dream, and The Power of Governance. And welcome back, Dr. Reuel Khoza.
Thank you very much.
I'm enjoying this conversation. So
Much appreciated.
But I'm still concerned, right? Here we have enough intellectual capacity. Not only yourself and other people have shared interesting thoughts on how we can mold our society into a winning nation, and for that matter, incorporate Africa in that thinking. Great stuff so far. But the outcomes do not attest to the fact that the points you shared with me earlier on. What do you think made it difficult for us to take charge of the destiny of at least South Africa from 1994?
I think we actually got off to a very good start with President Mandela. We're celebrating his 100th anniversary had he stayed alive. There was a time when we were proud to be South Africans, whether you go to Istanbul or you go to Russia or you go to Australia and you said, I am from South Africa, and people will say, oh, Mandela land. But you travel today. What do people say about what happened during the past 9 years or so? You actually feel like digging a hole and actually hiding. So I think the problem that we have is failing, as I said earlier on, to build on institutions. You have a Mandela succeeded by Thabo Mbeki, who consolidates the achievements and runs the country like it was a major corporation, South Africa Incorporated. And growth was anywhere between 4 and 6%, which was wonderful. And then you get succeeded by a wave of leaders that actually came to the fore, essentially because they were anti-him as opposed to he's got to be succeeded. And we wind up with a situation where the successor wants to wipe out history and behave as though you can actually start anew. And this tragic inclination or proclivity to want to rebuild as if nobody actually lived before, as if the Pixley Kaisa Kaseme that we speak about, the Langalibalas of this world that we talk about, even the more recent ones like Tambo and Lutuli, we don't strive to understand and say, well, the building blocks that they've put together, what might we do to build institutionally on what they have actually achieved?
But then, the political freedom that was attained, to many people, it gave rise to expectation that their hopes are going to be realized. You spoke about the political economy earlier on. And the best way for majority of South Africans to understand that they are free is when they can participate meaningfully in the economy. And we've got, as matters stand, around 30%, whatever number one goes with, but it's around there.
Correct.
Of people who are not participating meaningfully, they don't have skills, and it looks like it's now a permanent feature of South African life.
Tragically.
And on the other hand, even the emerging smaller entrepreneurs, they're not getting any access to growing their own businesses and building big corporations and competing with the established ones. And then it leads to a situation where we now are arguing about the racial makeup of the economy, and the impression is that it is whites who are responsible for the situation that black South Africans find themselves in. What is your view? What do we do?
I think the time has come for us to stop externalizing the problem. The problem is in fact ours. We have a government in place that is a majority government that should actually be doing things. But they've got to learn to do things in a manner that says deliver, consolidate, build, and proceed. We currently have the National Development Plan, fairly well thought out, except that perhaps in certain instances, it tends to be steeped in too much verbiage. You cannot give me a plan that is 400 pages long and summarize it somewhat, but expect me to fully understand that. You cannot articulate to me a vision in poetry that covers about 4 pages. You actually have to summarize it such that I can actually sing the vision as a mantra, on a daily basis. South Africa is about whatever, and much to that. So my sense is that for as long as we have lots of plans and not active planning, what do I mean by that? As long as we don't have that, we're not going to be able to implement. A plan is nothing. Active planning is it. Now, what do we mean by that? If you have a plan, you got to have timelines and deadlines. And you got to have monitoring mechanisms. Going wrong. And then not rely purely on people who think politically. Get people who may not necessarily make common cause with you ideologically. Because that way you're going to reduce your blind spot. All of us have got blind spots. And politicians, more often than not, have economic blind spots. And the only way they can actually do that is to interface with those that understand economics, those that understand commerce, those that understand business at large, and interface with them and not treat them as if they were foes, as if they were Philistines and not friends.
Sure.
More often than not, you get told, you clever blacks. And that in itself actually silenced too many people who would have loved to make positive contributions, not destructive criticism, but positive contributions. So those are some of the handicaps that we do.
Okay.
More often than not, those who organize tend to engage in activity as opposed to engaging in results-focused actions.
Well, let's take a look at what you said some time back regarding Africa, because the same ideas should apply everywhere throughout the continent.
Pan-Africanism, I want to submit, is an old age concept that has seen generations of African leaders determined to forge solidarity among African states. In other words, to render Africa a continent that is coherent and integrated.
Well, Pan-Africanism, many people understand it to mean solidarity no matter what, but not when people must come together collectively as a team and work towards constructive outcomes. Can you expand on that?
Very much so. I think first, you have to have a Pan-African mind. A Pan-African mind effectively says that I am of Africa. I am indigenous to this country. I may have been born in a village, perhaps outside Garankuwa or outside Nelspruit, but my world does not end in Garankuwa or Nelspruit. Neither does it end in South Africa. Neither does it end in Southern Africa, but I belong to the continent, and I've got to care about that continent. That effectively says people from elsewhere in Africa I shall treat as my own, and I shall seek to make common cause with them and to build together with them. Now, Pan-Africanism essentially started way back. I think around 1963 it was given great imprimatur by Kwame Nkrumah, who said, until such time that the last square foot of land is liberated, we are not free. And that, I think, was actually a momentous statement, as it were. And there are those that actually followed, or following that, your Julius Nyerere in backing the liberation struggle, your Kaunda, your Machel, and all of those kinds of people actually were practical manifestations of the idea of Pan-Africanism.
Now, Dr. Khoza, as we come to the end, I would like to learn from you, right? Your own experience. You're over 60 now. Many young people listening to you want to learn something for themselves as Africans in a non-racial South Africa. That what is it that you need to develop as a young person in terms, the appropriate leadership attributes that will serve you well and help the individual have impact on the communities they live in?
I think there are two pillars, effectively. One is competence. Make sure that you actually understand, and you understand rather deeply and broadly. competence. The second one is ethics. You have to behave. You got to believe in what is right, as distinguished from wrong, what is good, as distinguished from bad. That's what ethics is about. But ethics is even more important when you actually operationalize it, because it encompasses, amongst others, first, integrity. You got to be an honest leader if you want to be a leader, an honest citizen if you want to be an effective follower. That is very, very important, integrity. But that alone would not be adequate in terms of, talking about ethics. The second one would be competence, as I said earlier on. Integrity followed by competence. But that too has got to be followed by responsibility. You got to be a responsible person, care about self, care about significant others, care about even others that you don't consider significant. So responsibility, very, very important. But you must understand that you are accountable not only to yourself. You're accountable to all other human beings, starting with your folks, as in the family, the community, very, very important, and the country, and perhaps the continent at large, and from that base, accountable to humanity at large. So accountability, very, very important. But that is not enough. Fairness. You got to be fair in whatever it is you do as you lead. And you also have to be transparent. Those are all crucial elements of behaving ethically.
Dr. Reuel Khoza, thank you very much for having been our guest. We appreciate very much. And he's author of numerous books that include Attuned Leadership, Let Africa Lead, The African in My Dream, The Power of Governance. And we enjoyed talking to you and gaining insights from you. That's all we have for you this evening. And thank you for being a part of the Mudise Network. And be sure to join us again next week, Saturday at 6 p.m. And good night to you.